Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Solo Spooky Story. My name's Rob, and today I'll be your host. For those of you that don't know, the Solo Spooky Stories are shorter stories every other week presented by myself, where I'll just talk about something that I find pretty interesting, or we've had a listener suggestion come into us, or, it's just something that's myself or Zaz have found that we just want to talk about more. So they're nice episodes. I like doing them. They're probably some of my favorite ones to record sometimes. So, but yeah, with that said, this is a lovely time of the year, I suppose. For a lot of people, it can be difficult. For some other people as well. So I hope, however it is for you this year, you're enjoying yourself and you're keeping well. I personally, I'm looking forward to the end of the year. It'll be nice to have some time off work and things like that, and just to reset the batteries, the mental batteries anyway. So yeah, wherever it is you're listening, I hope if you do celebrate the holiday period at this time of the year, or even if you don't, you find some time to just relax and enjoy yourself at some point anyway, if you can. With that said, though, let's get into it. So obviously for a lot of the world, we're about to celebrate Christmas and things like that, and I thought it would be nice to do some sort of Christmas themed episode in the run up to Christmas. So I've searched far and wide, and I have come across a fun story about the Kallikantzaroi. I really hope I'm saying that correctly. I looked up multiple pronunciations, and these are Greek, basically Christmas goblins is the best way to describe them. And the Kallikantzaroi are a Christmas myth, basically, that is in that takes place during the 12 days of Christmas. And not just are they in Greek folklore, but they're also in Balkan folklore as well. And I'm not going to get into any sort of political issues there. I'm just going to acknowledge it and we'll move on. So these goblin-like creatures have haunted stories around winter and Christmas time in southeastern Europe for centuries. They allegedly emerge from the underworld during the liminal period during the 12 days of Christmas, and their purpose is purely just to sow chaos and disorder among us mere mortals. They're basically like gremlins, I suppose. And they actually have quite a lot of rich lore around them. There's a lot of variation in their origin stories. There's some symbolic meaning to them, obviously. There's kind of an interplay as well between ancient pagan beliefs and Christian rituals and the crossover there. And I suppose they also keep alive this communal storytelling aspect to the region. So we're gonna just do a brief overview of who these creatures are, and we'll have a little chat about them. And as it is a short episode, it won't be amazingly thorough, but hopefully it gives you enough to scratch that itch at this time of the year. So the Kallikantzaroi are fairly deeply entwined with the Mediterranean region, particularly the Eastern Mediterranean, where we're talking about today. And scholars believe that their origin comes from these ancient spirits from older, I suppose, ancient Greek myths and things like that. And they were these malevolent beings that were believed to inhabit the underworld and would emerge during the dark days of the winter solstice, a period that's obviously been traditionally associated with heightened supernatural activity. And while this barrier was, I suppose, thinner, it offered an opportunity for these beings to basically come across into our world and to get up to all sorts of mischief and kind of just cause us issues. So they're said to dwell underground. They spend most of the year attempting to basically pierce the barrier into our world. And by doing that, they're trying to use saws to cut through the trunks of the world tree, which is below the earth. And that basically this tree is allegedly there to support the earth. It's an ancient Greek conception of the world tree, or this cosmic pillar. And yeah, they're trying to break through this entire time. When they are eventually able to succeed, it's generally on Christmas morning, at which point they will get through up to the surface. And rather than, sowing like genuine seeds of chaos and causing problems, they become distracted by the opportunity to basically torment us instead. So rather than following through and trying to like take over the world or something in the 12 days that they have a chance to, they get distracted because they want to be dicks to us effectively. And by the time that they return underground, after the solstice has ended, the world tree has miraculously healed, and their task to break out again starts all over again for another year. So yeah, they're fun little creatures, and there's numerous ways to pronounce this word. There's also numerous different names for them. There's Greek influence, there's Turkish influence as well, and then within the region itself, then there's Greek and obviously Balkan variants to the name. But I suppose what the point I'm trying to make is that the sheer number of names and different ways to pronounce it and all, it just kind of underscores the status that these creatures have as this like phenomenon all throughout the region, and it's been shaped by centuries of, I suppose, cultural exchange and storytelling effectively. So the earliest detailed accounts that we can see in the modern period anyway, the Kallikantzaroi appear in writings of early modern Greek scholars such as Leo Alatius, it was around the 16th century when these emerged, and he described their behaviors and associated superstitions in a book on Greek popular beliefs. The folklorists then as well, later on in time, they also wrote about them. They collected these stories and the regional variants of the Kallikantzaroi, and looked at how they're kind of spread throughout Europe and in this region anyway. And even now in modern times, contemporary scholarship, it actually continues to explore their origins, I suppose the anthropology side to it and the psychological dimensions. And it's kind of cool in a sense. I saw one study that talked about how now the view of them is that they're emphasizing their role in mediating kind of anxieties about the kind of the time of the year and things like that, as evenings are getting darker, and people are kind of struggling with the shortness of days and things like that the stories are there to kind of offer comfort in some way. So I found it very interesting, and folklore is very, very good at that. There's a lot of nice things that these stories can do to cheer up people and hit them with some nostalgia, I guess, or just kind of comfort during this time of the year. So there's no, I suppose, single canonical description of the Kallikantzaroi and their appearance, but there are some numerous features and traits about them that I'll get into. So they allegedly have quite animalistic traits. They're often described as being small, dark, hairy creatures with goat-like legs. Some of them have donkey ears, some of them have horns, some of them have long black tails, some of them have short tails, and their bodies at times can be covered in coarse fur, sometimes not, and their eyes are frequently described as burning red or can glow in the dark. So basically any animal at all that you can imagine, they have the traits of them and can look like them. Some other traditions have portrayed them as these enormous, like, hulking beasts effectively, and then others at the same time then have imagined them as these impish kind of figures who are quite small. They might maybe possess monkey-like arms. They may have horse or donkey feet. Some of them may have tusks, or even a single eye or a single leg. Oftentimes their features are exaggerated and almost comical, I'd say, where they blend elements of monsters and just outright just kind of ridiculousness. So as you can see, they're basically whatever animal you can imagine could potentially be a Kallikantzaroi. And they're almost always described as being male. For whatever reason, we just like to fuck around more, I guess. And they're sometimes described as being blind or reverse footed, or sometimes deaf, or the numerous other descriptions of them are attributes. And they're the one, I suppose, consistent thing that you hear about them is that their appearance is matched by a distinctive and unpleasant odor that kind of follows them wherever they go. So yeah, they're basically the most varied creatures you can imagine. If you can picture any sort of creature, that's most likely a Kallikantzaroi, effectively, is what I've gotten from this. And yeah, so they are renowned for their mischievous and disruptive behaviors, and they're kind of this source of fear and amusement in folk tradition. And I suppose their typical actions kind of range from household mischief, where they'll slip into homes at night, often through chimneys. Who else does that at Christmas time? But also through cracks. They can fit through keyholes, apparently. They'll even just open doors. once a fire has died down in the house, they'll just walk in. They then, when they're inside, decide that they want to break furniture. They'll make food spoil. They will spoil drinks that are in the house as well. They'll make milk turn sour. They'll apparently urinate in fireplaces, which is just wild. Like, don't do that. They generally just create havoc. They also love pork, apparently. They're big on pork. So if there's a pork, an item of pork in your house, a Christmas pork, a Christmas ham, they will steal that and they'll eat it. They're also mad for sweets, and they enjoy terrorizing both children and adults. So, you know, they're pretty good there with that. They also apparently delight in making noise. They like to rattle and scream. They'll like rattle objects, they'll scream. They will allegedly approach children and cheat them out of their treats. So they'll basically play tricks on them to get them to hand over their sweets, which is just mad. They also mimic voices to lure people out of bed. And in some stories, they actually sit on sleeping people's chests, where they'll whisper riddles or demanding something impossible of them to get them off their chest. Which is, again, it's just mad. The thing that we can take comfort in is that their activities are strictly confined to the 12 days of Christmas. So from the December 25th to January 6th, that is only the only time that they're present on Earth. And then at the dawn then of the January 6th, they're basically driven back underground, and they have to hide away in their little gremlin holes again for another 12 months before they can come back out. But yeah, I suppose as kind of fearsome as they can be, they're rarely depicted as being actually like malevolent or dangerous. Rather, I suppose they're just tricksters, I guess. They're just there to basically sow the seeds of mischief, and they're generally ultimately harmless. And yeah, they're just kind of a fun story and a fun lore around them. So I want to just go through some stories, legends, and then some of the variations around them before I finish up. So the most, I suppose, iconic narrative involving the Kallikantzaroi centers on one of the stories from Sisyphus, who's an ancient Greek person. You can't really decide, or I suppose give one title to someone like Sisyphus: philosopher, storyteller, scientist, I'm sure, everything in between. But it's one of these stories where the Kallikantzaroi are attempting to destroy the world tree. And according to Greek folklore, as I said, they'd spend the entire year underground laboring with a saw, basically, to try to cut through the trunk of the tree that supports the earth. And their goal is effectively nothing less but to collapse the world in on itself, exterminate humanity, and basically take over the world. But just as they're about to succeed every single year, the arrival of Christmas effectively compels them to ascend to the surface. They manage to squeeze through the hole that they cut through, and they so cherish the opportunity to fuck around with humans that they become distracted by this opportunity, and they just wreak havoc on us instead. And by the time that they return underground, the tree has completely healed itself, and they get stuck in this perpetual cycle of having to do it over and over again, which is just brilliant. And another very well-known story is a Greek fairy tale involving the Kallikantzaroi, and it's the story of two sisters, Kallo and Marbo. And in this narrative, Kallo is sent to a mill at midnight and encounters these goblins. And she uses her wit and her cunning to effectively trick them into fetching her jewels and beautiful dresses. So she basically turns it on them, and she convinces them to go get jewels, precious stones, and to find dresses for her. And they do. They go off and they do it. And by the time dawn comes around, the goblins are forced to retreat. So they end up leaving her completely unscathed and incredibly wealthy. So Marbo, who is Kallo's sister, becomes incredibly envious of her success and attempts the same, I suppose, trick as Kallo did, but she isn't as cunning as her. And instead, she ends up falling victim to the goblins' pranks, and she returns home completely humiliated and empty-handed. And it's a fun story. It's a fun little, I suppose, Christmas tale. I guess it's a nice one to read, and it's pretty short as well. But I suppose the story's there to offer some sort of highlight of it highlights the nature, I suppose, of the Kallikantzaroi in that they are dangerous, but they are susceptible to human ingenuity, I suppose. And I guess the story serves as a way to reinforce the importance of having a quick wit about you and maybe being a bit resourceful. So yeah, it's a fun one. It's a nice little story. And yeah, so that kind of is it. There's a lot more to them. Like there's numerous variations of them in Greece, obviously, and then in the Balkans and out further afield as well. Like in Greece, as I said, they're typically depicted as being small, hairy, goat-legged goblins that are just there to sow the seeds of chaos in houses. In Cyprus, then, they're described as being small and invisible, but they're these still dark goblin-like creatures with a particular fondness for a sort of treat. It's like honey. And in Cyprus during the 12 days, families will actually prepare these honey treats and leave them outside their doors to basically distract the goblins, to stop them from coming in. In Serbian folklore then, they're often depicted as being female, and then they're black in colour, and they're more, I suppose, demonic in how they look. They've got these long arms, horns, goat-like features, and they're apparently incredibly dangerous during certain periods of time. They're actually said to attack people who go outside at night, and that they actually ride on these people until dawn. So they'll effectively like jump you, and then they won't get off you. They'll effectively ride you like a horse until the next morning, which is fucking wild. In Bulgaria, they are similar enough, but they're more like a shape-shifting demon, that they could appear as a dog or a man or a sheep or a cow, I guess. And it's believed to dwell in caves, rivers, or in abandoned mills. And they again will emerge at night to ride on or torment travelers. So again, it's that kind of similarity there where they'll get on someone and they'll basically torment them. It's really, really interesting. And I suppose in Turkey then, they're usually more kind of animalistic. They're hairy, animalistic creatures who appear during the coldest days of winter. They are known for asking riddles or questions to passersby. People walking past them. And if you basically get the answer incorrect, it can have dire consequences. So yeah, they're really, really interesting. Like there's a lot to them. Like they're fun little creatures. And yeah, if you're concerned about the Kallikantzaroi getting to you, I have some household defenses and ritual practices that you can use to ward them off. So before we finish up, you'll like to know that if you keep the fire burning in your house, the Kallikantzaroi are believed to enter the home through a chimney. If you keep the hearth burning during the entire 12 days of Christmas, the warmth and light will repel them from coming in that way. If you hang any sort of garlic, holly, or basil in your house, they're immediately warded off. They're like, no, fuck this, not a fan of that, leave me alone. Obviously, Christianity has a part to play in this because, you know, they love to. So if you put a cross on your door or use any sort of holy water on open doors or windows, they don't want to deal with that either, so they'll leave it alone, which, you know, it's great. And a few other ones, if you leave out any sort of colander or a sieve on the doorstep, according to legend, the Kallikantzaroi are actually compelled to count the holes on the sieve or the colander, and they basically can't pronounce the number 3 because it's a sacred number in Christianity. So they'll keep trying to count it. They can't say 3, and then they get stuck in this cycle of trying to count, and then dawn approaches and then they have to run away. You know, that's really useful knowledge. Apparently if you burn an old pair of shoes in the fireplace, it apparently creates some sort of stench that they don't like, so they'll run away. And yeah, finally, if you have a special Yule log and you keep it burning for the entire 12 days, they don't want to fuck with that and they leave it alone. So yeah, there's some, I suppose, Christian and pre-Christian, non-Christian elements for everyone to use there if you want to keep the Kallikantzaroi out of your house over Christmas. But yeah, you know, that's kind of it. It's a fun story. There are just these mischievous little goblins basically that are just there to just cause some problems, but generally they're fairly harmless. Maybe we'll let them into our house this year. We'll see. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this one. It's, you know, it's rare that we'll do kind of just cryptid or monster cases, so I like doing them. So it's a fun one, and especially with this time of the year, I think it's quite appropriate to have a Christmas themed goblin to talk about in people's houses. But yeah, you can let us know what you think about this. You can get us on social media. You can get us on Instagram or Threads at the Spooky AF Pod. You can get us in the YouTube comments when this episode goes up, or you can get us at Gmail at spookyafpodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear your thoughts on this one. But with that said, I hope you're having a lovely day whenever it is you're listening to this, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy, guys.